You kidnapped my daughter. The billionaire's fiancé pointed at Rosa, tears streaming down her perfect face. I want her gone forever. Rosa dropped to her knees. The handcuffs bit into her wrists. Her uniform was soaked. Her hands were covered in mud. She had just run miles through freezing rain to save that little girl, and now she was being arrested for it. Don't let her fool you, Harrison. Vanessa's voice turned sharp. She's a manipulator. She planned this. Harrison looked at Rosa. Then he looked at his fiancée. Her dress was clean. Her shoes were spotless. But he said nothing. He just stood there, frozen. Officer, please take her away. Vanessa smiled. I want her out of our lives. Rosa felt something break inside her chest. Not her hope, not her will, something deeper. She realized in that moment that the man she had trusted, the man whose daughter she had raised for 4 years, was not going to save her. She was completely alone. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you subscribe to this channel.
Harrison Sterling did not become a billionaire by accident. He built his real estate empire from nothing, starting as a construction worker at 19, working 18-hour days, sleeping in his truck for 3 years so he could save every dollar. By 35, he owned half the commercial properties in the city. By 42, his name was on hospital wings and university buildings. But none of that mattered to him. The only thing Harrison Sterling truly loved was his daughter, Chloe. Chloe was 6 years old. She had her mother's eyes, big and brown and full of quiet curiosity. Her mother had passed away when Chloe was only 2. A sudden illness, a week in the hospital, and then she was gone. Harrison had not dated anyone for 2 years after that. He had thrown himself into work and into raising Chloe with the help of nannies and babysitters. But none of them lasted. They came and went, collecting their paychecks, doing the bare minimum. Until Rosa. Rosa had been with the Sterling family for 4 years. She was 43 years old, originally from a small town in Guatemala, and she had come to this country with nothing but a worn-out suitcase and a photograph of her son. Her son's name was Mateo. He was 10 years old, and he had been born with a heart condition so severe that doctors said he might not see his 11th birthday. Rosa had left him with her sister to come work in the United States. Every single dollar she earned, every penny, went back home to pay for Mateo's medications and hospital visits. Rosa did not complain about her life. She woke up at 4 a.m. every morning, took 2 buses and a train to reach the penthouse by 6, and she worked until Chloe went to bed at 8 p.m. She cooked every meal from scratch because Chloe had allergies and Rosa refused to trust packaged food. She learned Chloe's favorite songs and sang her to sleep, even when her own feet were swollen from standing all day. She never asked for a raise, she never took a sick day. When Harrison once tried to give her a bonus, she tried to refuse it. She said she was just doing her job. But Harrison knew better. He watched the way Chloe ran to Rosa every morning, wrapping her small arms around Rosa's legs. He watched the way Rosa packed Chloe's lunch with little notes drawn in marker, little hearts and smiley faces. He watched the way Rosa stayed up all night when Chloe had a fever, pressing cool cloths to her forehead, reading her stories until the sun came up. This was not a housekeeper. This was a second mother. 6 months before the arrest, Rosa had come to Harrison's home office. She was crying. That was the first time Harrison had ever seen her cry. Mateo needed another surgery. His heart was failing. The cost was $40,000, and Rosa did not have it. She was not asking Harrison for money. She was asking for more shifts, more hours, anything she could do to earn it herself. She stood in his doorway with her hands clasped in front of her, her voice barely a whisper, and she apologized for bothering him. Harrison wrote the check that afternoon. He handed it to Rosa and told her it was not alone. He told her to take Mateo to the best doctors in the country, to fly him here if she needed to do whatever it took. Rosa had collapsed to her knees. She had pressed the check to her chest and sobbed. She promised Harrison she would work off every single penny, that she would clean his floors until her hands bled, that she would never, ever forget what he had done for her son. That was the kind of woman Rosa was. Grateful, loyal, quietly, stubbornly good. Then came Vanessa. Vanessa was 26 years old. She was a former model,
tall and blonde and impossibly beautiful, with a smile that could light up a room and a laugh that made men turn their heads. Harrison had met her at a charity gala 18 months ago. She had approached him, not the other way around. She had told him she admired his work, his philanthropy, his dedication to his daughter. She had listened to him talk about Chloe for an hour without once checking her phone. Harrison fell for her quickly. He was lonely. He had been raising Chloe alone for years, and the weight of it was exhausting. Vanessa made him feel young again. She laughed at his jokes. She planned romantic dinners. She told him he deserved to be happy. Within 6 months, she had moved into the penthouse. Within a year, he had proposed. The wedding was scheduled for a Saturday in June, exactly 1 week after the night everything fell apart. But behind closed doors, Vanessa was not the woman Harrison thought he had fallen in love with. Rosa saw it first. Vanessa did not like Chloe. She tolerated the child the way someone tolerates an inconvenient piece of furniture. She would smile at Chloe when Harrison was watching, but the moment he turned his back, her face would go cold. She would tell Chloe to go play in her room, to be quiet, to stop asking so many questions. She would complain to Rosa about how loud Chloe was, how messy, how needy. Vanessa wanted the wedding to be perfect. She wanted the flowers, the dress, the venue, the guest list. She wanted the billionaire's life. She did not want a 6-year-old who woke up crying from nightmares and needed to be tucked back into bed.
She had told Rosa more than once, in a voice dripping with contempt, that after the wedding, Chloe would be going to boarding school, that Harrison just needed to be convinced. Rosa had tried to tell Harrison once. It was 3 months before the arrest. She had found him in his office late one night and had carefully, gently tried to explain that Vanessa was not kind to Chloe when he was not home. Harrison had listened. He had nodded. And then he had told Rosa that Vanessa was under a lot of stress with the wedding planning, that she was a good person, that Rosa was probably just misunderstanding. Harrison did not want to believe it. Believing it would mean admitting that he had brought a monster into his daughter's home. Believing it would mean canceling the wedding, facing the humiliation, starting over. So he buried his doubts. He told himself Rosa was overprotective. He told himself Vanessa would change after the wedding. He told himself everything was fine. That was his mistake. And 4 days later, he would pay for it. On the morning of the incident, Harrison had left for a board meeting at 6 a.m. He had kissed Chloe on the forehead while she was still half asleep. He had nodded to Rosa, who was already in the kitchen making breakfast. He had waved to Vanessa, who was still in bed scrolling through her phone. It was a Tuesday. Nothing about that morning seemed unusual. Nothing about that morning warned him that by nightfall, his entire world would be turned upside down. The board meeting ran long. Harrison turned his phone off, as he always did during important negotiations. He did not see the messages. He did not see the missed calls. He did not know that while he was sitting in a glass conference room discussing property deals, his daughter was being dragged out of his home by a woman he trusted. He did not know that Rosa was running through freezing rain to save a child who was not hers. He did not know that Vanessa was dialing 911 with tears in her voice and lies on her tongue. By the time Harrison walked through the doors of his penthouse that evening, the police were already there. The handcuffs were already on Rosa's wrists. Chloe was already wrapped in that silver blanket, staring at nothing. And Vanessa was already crying into a silk tissue, playing the role of the terrified fiancé. Harrison stood in the doorway of his own home and felt the floor disappear beneath him. He had built an empire. He had survived losses that would have broken lesser men. But nothing, not one single moment in his entire life, had prepared him for the sight of Rosa in handcuffs and Chloe's empty, hollow eyes. He did not know it yet, but the truth was waiting for him, and it was buried in the most unlikely place of all.
The detective's voice was flat, professional, and utterly damning. Mr. Sterling, your fiancée called 911 at approximately 4:45 p.m. She stated that your housekeeper, Rosa Vasquez, demanded $50,000 in ransom money. When Miss Vanessa refused, Miss Vasquez allegedly grabbed your daughter, fled the penthouse on foot, and attempted to disappear into the city with the child. Harrison stared at the detective. The words did not make sense. They bounced off his brain like stones skipping across ice. Ransom? Kidnapping? Rosa? He looked at Vanessa, who was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Her shoulders were shaking. Her breath came in uneven gasps. She looked terrified. She looked exactly like a woman who had just survived an attempted kidnapping, but something was wrong. Harrison's mind, trained by years of high-stakes negotiations, was already scanning for inconsistencies. He looked at Rosa. The housekeeper was on her knees now, held up only by the officers gripping her arms. Her uniform was soaked, her face was streaked with mud and tears. She was shaking so violently that her teeth were chattering, and she was looking at him with eyes that held no guilt, no anger, no fear of punishment, only a deep, bottomless grief. "Rosa," Harrison said, his voice cracking, "is this true?" Rosa opened her mouth. Her lips were blue from the cold. A sound came out, but it was not words. It was a sob, raw and broken, ripped from somewhere deep inside her chest. She shook her head, slowly at first, then harder. She was trying to speak, trying to explain, but her body would not cooperate. She had been running, she had been cold, she had been terrified, and now she was being led away in handcuffs. "Don't let her fool you, Harrison," Vanessa said sharply. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. The sweet, trembling fiancé was gone. In her place was something harder, something colder. "She's a manipulator. She's been planning this for weeks. The police caught her dragging Chloe down a muddy alleyway 3 miles from here. If I hadn't tracked Chloe's smartwatch and called them, she would have taken her somewhere we would never find her." Harrison turned to look at his daughter. Chloe was sitting on the velvet sofa, wrapped in that silver blanket. Her small face was pale. Her eyes were wide and fixed on a point on the floor. She had not spoken since Harrison walked in. She had not reached for Vanessa. She had not reached for him. She just sat there, trembling, staring at nothing. The officers pulled Rosa to her feet. They began walking her toward the door. And then it happened, the moment that would haunt Harrison for the rest of his life. Chloe lifted her head. Her small hand reached out from beneath the blanket, and she pointed, not at Vanessa, not at her father, but at Rosa. "No," she whispered. Her voice was faint, broken, barely audible. "Mimi, stay." But the officers did not hear, or if they did not care. They pulled Rosa through the door. The heavy wooden door swung shut behind her with a low, final thud. And Harrison was left standing in his living room, staring at the muddy footprints Rosa's shoes had left on his pristine marble floor.
The turning point was invisible to everyone in that room, but Harrison felt it. Deep in his gut, in the place where instinct lives, something was screaming at him. The story Vanessa had told did not fit the woman he had just watched being dragged out of his home. It did not fit the woman who had spent 4 years loving his daughter. It did not fit the woman who had refused a bonus because she felt she had not earned it. Harrison Sterling had made his fortune by trusting his gut when everyone else trusted the numbers. And right now, his gut was telling him one thing with absolute terrifying certainty. He had just watched an innocent woman go to jail for a crime that never happened. That night, after the police left and the penthouse fell silent, Harrison carried Chloe to her bedroom. She was light in his arms, too light, like a bird with broken wings. He drew a warm bath and gently washed the mud from her small hands and feet. She did not fight him. She did not help him. She just sat there, staring at the water, her body limp and unresponsive. Harrison had seen this before. After Chloe's mother died, the little girl had gone silent for 3 weeks. The doctors called it acute stress response. They said she would speak again when she felt safe. But Harrison had never felt more helpless than he did in those weeks, watching his daughter disappear into herself. And now it was happening again, only this time he did not know who had hurt her. Or maybe he did not want to know. He tucked Chloe into bed and pulled her pink comforter up to her chin. He sat beside her for 2 hours, holding her hand, waiting for her to fall asleep. She finally drifted off around midnight, her small fingers still clutching his. Harrison waited another 30 minutes before he carefully pulled his hand away and walked back into the living room. Vanessa was on the sofa. She had changed into silk pajamas and was drinking a glass of expensive red wine. Her phone was in her hand.
She was scrolling through something, her face relaxed, almost bored. She did not look up when Harrison walked in. The wedding planner called, Vanessa said, still scrolling. The florist delivered the wrong centerpieces. Can you believe it? As if I don't have enough to deal with right now. Harrison stopped walking. He stood in the middle of the living room, staring at his fiancée. She had just watched a woman get arrested. She had just watched his daughter sit in shock for hours. And she was complaining about flowers?
The disconnect was so massive, so glaring that Harrison felt his stomach turn. "Vanessa," he said slowly, "Rosa is in jail. Chloe hasn't spoken a word in 6 hours, and you're worried about centerpieces?" Vanessa looked up. Her expression flickered just for a second, and Harrison saw something there that made his blood run cold. It was annoyance, not guilt, not sadness, annoyance that he was questioning her. "I'm sorry, Harrison," she said, her voice softening into something that was almost convincing. "I'm just stressed. The wedding, the police, all of it. It's been a horrible day. I'm not handling it well." She set her phone down and opened her arms. "Come here. I need you to hold me." Harrison did not move. He could not, because in that moment something else caught his attention. He looked down at the floor near the sofa. The marble was spotless. He looked at Vanessa's feet. She was wearing light beige suede slippers, also spotless. He looked at the path from the door to the sofa, the path Vanessa must have walked when she came home from the police station. No mud, no dirt, no trace of a struggle. Harrison walked slowly to the kitchen. He needed space. He needed to think. He opened the refrigerator and stared inside, not seeing anything. His mind was running calculations, running scenarios, running through every word Vanessa had said. She claims she had chased Rosa. She claimed she had fought a kidnapper in a muddy alleyway. She claimed she had rescued Chloe from a woman who was trying to disappear into the city. But if that was true, where was the evidence on her body? Her dress had been clean, her hair had been perfect, her shoes had been spotless. Harrison closed the refrigerator and walked to the kitchen island, and that was when he saw it. On the white quartz countertop, next to where Vanessa had tossed her handbag, was a small smudge of dark gray clay. It was the exact same color as the mud on Rosa's shoes. He looked down. Beneath the counter was the stainless steel kitchen trash can. The lid was closed. Harrison pressed the pedal with his foot, and the lid popped open. Inside, resting on top of coffee pods and discarded mail, was a crumpled piece of paper. It looked like a receipt. Harrison reached in and pulled it out. His hands were shaking as he smoothed the paper against the counter. It was a toll receipt. The timestamp read 2:15 p.m. The location read Oak Ridge Industrial Bypass. Harrison had never heard of Oak Ridge Industrial Bypass. He pulled out his phone and searched the address. His heart stopped. Oak Ridge was an abandoned industrial park 20 miles outside the city. It was a wasteland of empty warehouses, broken asphalt, and rusted shipping containers. It was not a place anyone went willingly. It was certainly not a place a wealthy socialite planning a luxury wedding would ever visit. So why was Vanessa there at 2:15 in the afternoon? And why was the receipt buried in the trash? Harrison did not sleep that night. He lay in the guest bedroom, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rosa's face, that look of utter devastation, that silent, desperate shake of her head. He saw Chloe's small hand reaching out. He heard her whisper, "Mimi, stay." At 3 a.m., he opened his laptop. He pulled up Rosa's employee file. He had never really looked at it before, not closely. Now he read every line. Rosa Vasquez, age 43. Hired 4 years ago. No criminal record, no complaints, no write-ups, just page after page of positive performance reviews, notes about her punctuality, her dedication, her gentle way with Chloe. He found the email chain from 6 months ago, the one about Mateo's surgery. Rosa had written him a letter, a real letter on paper, thanking him for saving her son's life. He had kept it in his desk drawer because it had moved him. In the letter, Rosa had written, "Mr. Sterling, I have nothing to give you but my loyalty. For as long as I live, I will protect your daughter like she is my own. You have my word." Harrison read that line 3 times. Then he closed the laptop and put his head in his hands. A woman like that does not kidnap a child she loves. A woman like that does not demand ransom money.
A woman like that runs into freezing rain to save a little girl who is not hers. At 5 a.m., Harrison made a decision. He was going to find out what really happened, and he was going to start with Vanessa's car. He quietly dressed in dark clothes and took the private elevator down to the underground parking garage. The garage was cold and silent, lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. Harrison walked past his own vehicles and stopped in front of the black luxury SUV that Vanessa drove. He unlocked the doors with his key fob and climbed into the driver's seat. The smell hit him immediately. Earth, damp clay, rain. It was faint, but it was there, clinging to the carpets, the seats, the air vents. Harrison turned on the interior light and looked down at the floor mat. It had been wiped down, but the grooves of the rubber mat still held traces of dark gray mud. The same color, the same texture. Harrison's heart was pounding now. He reached for the ignition, but he did not start the engine. Instead, he turned on the battery and activated the massive digital dashboard display. His company had designed the security software for this vehicle. It had a dash cam system that recorded both the road ahead and the cabin interior. The footage was saved to an encrypted hard drive that could not be deleted without physical access to the system. Harrison navigated through the touchscreen menu. His finger was trembling as he tapped through the settings. He found the video logs and scrolled back to the previous day. He found the timestamp that matched the crumpled toll receipt, 2:15 p.m. He tapped the screen. The video loaded. The screen split into two views. The top half showed the road ahead through the windshield. Dark storm clouds gathered over a bleak landscape of abandoned warehouses and broken pavement. Rain was falling in sheets, hammering against the glass. The windshield wipers were slashing back and forth at full speed. The bottom half of the screen showed the inside of the cabin. Vanessa was behind a wheel. She was wearing the same dress she had worn that evening, the designer outfit that had been perfectly clean. Her hair was down, her makeup was flawless, but her face was not the face of a frightened fiancé. It was the face of pure, unfiltered rage. In the back seat, strapped into her booster seat, was Chloe.
The little girl was crying. Not the soft cry of a child who had stubbed her toe. This was hysterical, panicked, terrified crying. She had her hands pressed over her ears. Her face was red and wet with tears. Harrison forgot how to breathe. He turned up the volume. Vanessa's voice exploded through the SUV's speakers, and what he heard destroyed everything he thought he knew about the woman he was about to marry. "Shut up!" Vanessa screamed. Her voice was vicious, venomous, completely unrecognizable. "Shut up, you annoying little brat! I am trying to coordinate a $1 million wedding, and you will not stop whining!" Chloe sobbed in the back seat. "I want Mimi. I want to go home." "You are not going home," Vanessa spat. She slammed her hand against the steering wheel. The car swerved slightly before she corrected it. "You are going to learn some manners if it kills you. Your father spoils you. He lets you run wild. But I am not your father. And when we are married, things are going to change." Harrison watched in horror as Vanessa turned the SUV off the main road onto a narrow, cracked asphalt path. The GPS on the dash showed they were entering the Oak Ridge Industrial Park. The buildings here were abandoned, windows broken, walls covered in graffiti. There was no one around, no cars, no people, just rain and concrete and decay. Vanessa drove deep into the park, past rows of empty warehouses, until she reached a massive parking lot. She slammed on the brakes. The SUV skidded to a halt in the middle of the lot, surrounded by towering concrete buildings with shattered windows. "You need a timeout," Vanessa said. "A real one." She unbuckled her seatbelt. She opened her door and stepped out into the freezing rain. Harrison watched the cabin camera as she walked around to the rear passenger door. She yanked it open. Chloe screamed. Vanessa reached in, grabbed the little girl by the arm, and pulled her out of the booster seat. Chloe's feet hit the muddy asphalt. She was wearing thin sneakers and a light jacket. The rain immediately soaked through her clothes. She started crying harder, reaching up for Vanessa, begging to be picked up. Vanessa looked down at her, and then she let go. Chloe fell to her knees in the mud. She looked up at Vanessa, confused, terrified, not understanding what was happening. "You stay here," Vanessa said. Her voice was calm now, cold, controlled. "You stay here until you learn how to be quiet. Do you understand me? When I come back, you will not say one word. You will not cry. You will not ask for Mimi. You will sit there like a good little girl, and you will think about how lucky you are to have me as your new mother." Vanessa turned and walked back to the driver's door. She climbed in and slammed it shut. The locks clicked. Chloe was still on the ground outside, banging her small fists against the window, screaming for help that was not coming. Vanessa started the engine. She put the car in drive, and she drove away. Harrison watched the cabin camera as Vanessa drove out of the parking lot, out of the industrial park, and onto the main road. She was scrolling through her phone now. Her face was relaxed. She reapplied her lipstick using the rear-view mirror. She did not look back. She did not hesitate. She left a 6-year-old child alone in a freezing rainstorm in the middle of an abandoned industrial wasteland. The timestamp on the video showed 2:22 p.m. Vanessa did not return for 2 hours.
Harrison could not look away from the screen. The dashboard display showed the cabin camera footage continuing to play. Vanessa drove for miles, casually sipping from a water bottle, scrolling through social media, completely unbothered by the monstrous act she had just committed. She stopped at a coffee shop. She sat in the drive-through line for 7 minutes, ordered a latte, and drove on. She was killing time. She was letting a child freeze in the rain so that when she finally returned, Chloe would be too scared to ever misbehave again. But Vanessa did not know about the dash cam. She did not know that every second of her cruelty was being recorded, and she did not know that someone else had already found Chloe. Harrison fast-forwarded the footage. He watched the timestamp crawl forward: 2:30 p.m., 2:45 p.m., 3 p.m. At 3:15 p.m., the cabin camera showed Vanessa pulling into a gas station. She filled the tank. She bought a snack. She took a selfie in the bathroom mirror. She was smiling. At 3:45 p.m., Vanessa finally turned the SUV around and started driving back toward Oak Ridge. Her expression was annoyed, like someone who had been forced to interrupt a pleasant afternoon to deal with an unpleasant chore. But when she pulled into the parking lot at 4:10 p.m., something was different. The headlights cut through the rain and illuminated a scene Vanessa had not expected. There, sitting on a broken piece of concrete under a rusted metal awning, was Rosa. The housekeeper was soaked to the bone. Her gray uniform was plastered to her skin. Her shoes were caked in thick, dark mud. Her hair was wild and matted with rain, but in her arms, wrapped tightly against her chest, beneath her own jacket to keep warm, was Chloe. Rosa had found her. The dash cam captured every detail. Rosa was rocking back and forth, kissing Chloe's forehead, whispering something to her. The little girl was no longer crying. She was curled into Rosa's body like a baby animal seeking warmth. Her eyes were closed. Her small hands were gripping Rosa's uniform. She looked peaceful for the first time since she had been abandoned. Vanessa's face on the cabin camera went pale. Her mouth opened. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. She sat in the SUV for a full 30 seconds, staring at the scene in front of her. Then she started shouting, "No, no, no, no!" She slammed her palm against the steering wheel. She was not angry that a child had been left alone in a storm. She was angry that she had been caught. She knew in that instant that Rosa would tell Harrison everything. And if Harrison knew the truth, the wedding would be over. The penthouse would be over. The billionaire's life she had worked so hard to secure would disappear like smoke. Vanessa threw the SUV into park. She jumped out into the rain and marched toward Rosa. The cabin camera did not catch the audio of what happened next, but Harrison could see everything. Vanessa was pointing at Rosa, her face twisted with rage. Rosa was shaking her head, clutching Chloe tighter. Vanessa grabbed Rosa's arm. Rosa pulled away. Vanessa grabbed Chloe. Rosa stood up, still holding the child, and took a step back. And then Vanessa did something that would seal her fate. She pulled out her phone. She dialed 911, and she began to cry. Harrison watched as Vanessa transformed in front of the camera. Her face went from rage to terror in less than a second. Her voice, which had been shrieking moments before, became high and frightened. She was performing, she was acting, and she was very, very good at it.
The police arrived 17 minutes later. The dash cam showed them pulling into the parking lot, lights flashing. They got out of their cars and approached the scene. Vanessa ran toward them, pointing at Rosa, sobbing, telling them a story that was the exact opposite of the truth. She told them Rosa had kidnapped Chloe. She told them Rosa had demanded ransom money. She told them she had tracked Chloe's smartwatch and led the police to this location. She told them she had fought Rosa to get the child back. The officers looked at Rosa. They looked at her muddy uniform, her bare hands, her exhausted face. They looked at Chloe, wrapped in Rosa's jacket, clinging to the woman who had saved her. And then they looked at Vanessa, clean and dry and perfectly dressed, weeping into her hands. They arrested Rosa. The dashcam footage ended at 4:52 p.m. The screen went dark. Harrison sat in the driver's seat of the SUV, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. Tears were streaming down his face. He had just watched the woman he loved abandon his daughter in a frozen wasteland. He had just watched the woman he trusted frame an innocent person for a crime that never happened. But more than that, he had just watched a miracle. Rosa had run through freezing rain for miles to save a child who was not hers. She had no car. She had no money for a taxi. She had taken a bus as far as it would go, and then she had run. She had run until her legs gave out. She had run until her lungs burned. She had run because Chloe needed her. Harrison pulled out his phone. He copied the dashcam footage to a secure cloud drive. Then he made 2 phone calls. The first was to his lawyer. The second was to the district attorney. The wedding was in 48 hours, but Harrison Sterling was not going to a wedding. He was going to war. Harrison did not confront Vanessa that night. He did not scream at her. He did not throw her out of the penthouse. He did not give her any indication that anything had changed. This was the hardest part. Every instinct in his body wanted to walk into the bedroom, wake her up, and demand answers. But Harrison had not built a billion-dollar empire by acting on impulse. He had built it by waiting, watching, and striking when the moment was exactly right. So he went back upstairs. He washed his face, he changed his clothes, and when Vanessa woke up the next morning, Harrison was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, reading the newspaper. He looked calm, he looked normal, he looked exactly like a man who still believed his fiancé was the victim of a terrible crime. "Good morning, darling," Vanessa said, kissing the top of his head. "Did you sleep at all?" "Not much," Harrison said. It was the truth. Too much on my mind. Vanessa poured herself a cup of coffee and sat across from him. She was wearing a silk robe. Her hair was perfect. Her face was fresh and clean. She looked like she did not have a single care in the world. "The wedding is tomorrow," she said softly. "I know this has been awful, but after tomorrow everything will be different. We'll be married, Chloe will adjust, Rosa will be gone. It will just be us." Harrison looked at her over the rim of his coffee cup. He felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even hatred. He felt the cold, clear focus of a man who had seen the truth and was now moving toward justice. "Yes," he said quietly. "After tomorrow, everything will be different." Vanessa smiled. She thought he meant the wedding.
She had no idea what he actually meant. The next 24 hours were a performance. Harrison went through the motions of a groom preparing for his wedding. He met with the wedding planner. He confirmed the guest list. He approved the menu. He did everything that was expected of him. But in between these tasks, he he was working. His first call was to his lawyer, a woman named Catherine Reeves who had been with his company for 15 years. Catherine was ruthless, discreet, and absolutely loyal. Harrison sent her the dash cam footage at 7 a.m. By 9 a.m. she had reviewed it and called him back. "This is enough to put her away for years," Catherine said. Her voice was steady, but Harrison could hear the anger underneath. Child endangerment, filing a false police report, potentially attempted kidnapping, depending on how the prosecutor wants to charge it. "Harrison, where did you get this?" "The dash cam in her SUV," Harrison said. "She didn't know it was there." "She didn't know a lot of things," Catherine said. "What's your plan?" Harrison told her. It was simple, it was quiet, and it was devastating. He would not cancel the wedding. He would let Vanessa believe she had won. He would let her walk down the aisle in her white dress, surrounded by 200 guests, thinking she was about to become Mrs. Harrison Sterling. And then, at the exact moment when she was most vulnerable, when she was standing in front of everyone who mattered, he would destroy her. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. "You're sure about this?" she asked. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," Harrison said. The second call was to the district attorney's office. Harrison had donated heavily to the DA's election campaign, and he had never asked for anything in return. Now he was asking. He explained what he had found. He offered to provide the evidence immediately. The DA, a woman named Sandra Okonkwo, who had built her reputation on putting away corrupt politicians and white-collar criminals, listened without interrupting. "Mr. Sterling," she said when he finished, "I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've seen a lot of evil, but this is something else. Send me the footage. I'll have a warrant ready by tomorrow afternoon." Harrison sent the footage. Then he made his third call. This one was to the county jail. Rosa had been held without bail. The judge had considered her a flight risk because she was an immigrant with family outside the country. Harrison's lawyer had filed an emergency motion for release, but it would take time to process. In the meantime, Harrison wanted Rosa to know that someone was fighting for her. The jail would not let him speak to her directly, but they allowed him to leave a message. Harrison thought carefully about what to say. He did not want to raise her hopes too high. He did not want to promise something that might not happen. In the end, he kept it simple. "Rosa, this is Harrison. I know what happened. I have the proof. You are going to be okay. I promise you. Hold on a little longer." He hung up the phone and sat in his home office, looking out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Rosa was sitting in a concrete cell, cold and scared and alone. She did not know that her salvation was already in motion. She did not know that the man who had once doubted her was now her fiercest ally. Harrison thought about Mateo, Rosa's son.
The 10-year-old boy with the weak heart, waiting for his mother to come home. Rosa had left him behind to work in this country. She had sacrificed time with her own child to take care of someone else's. And now she was in jail, falsely accused, while the woman who had actually hurt a child was planning a wedding. The injustice of it made Harrison's chest ache, but he did not let himself dwell on it. There would be time for grief later. Right now, there was only the plan. The fourth call was to Chloe's doctor. Harrison needed to know if his daughter would recover from what had happened. The doctor, a child psychologist named Dr. Elena Vasquez, no relation to Rosa, had been treating Chloe since her mother died. She agreed to come to the penthouse that afternoon. When she arrived, Chloe was still sitting on the sofa, still wrapped in that silver blanket, still staring at nothing. She had not eaten, she had not spoken, she had not moved from the spot where the police had left her. Vanessa had tried to get her to eat breakfast, but Chloe had turned her head away. Vanessa had given up after 5 minutes. Dr. Vasquez sat down next to Chloe. She did not try to force conversation. She just sat there, quietly present, waiting. After 20 minutes, Chloe leaned her head against the doctor's arm. It was a small gesture, but it was the first voluntary movement the child had made since the arrest. "She's in shock,"
Dr. Vasquez told Harrison privately. She witnessed something terrifying. She may not remember all of it. The brain has a way of protecting itself from trauma. But she will need time, she will need safety, and she will need the people she trusts most. Harrison nodded. She trusts Rosa, he said. Dr. Vasquez looked at him. Then Rosa needs to be here. Harrison did not answer, but he was already thinking about what would happen tomorrow, after the confrontation, after the arrest. He was already planning how to bring Rosa home. That night, Harrison ate dinner with Vanessa. They sat at the dining room table, just the two of them, surrounded by candles and flowers. Vanessa had ordered takeout from their favorite restaurant. She was wearing a beautiful red dress. She was laughing, talking about the honeymoon, making plans for the future. Harrison smiled. He nodded. He said all the right things. And all the while, he was watching her, watching the way she cut her food, watching the way she checked her phone every few minutes, watching the way she glanced at Chloe's empty chair at the table and did not seem to notice or care. After dinner, Vanessa went to bed early. She said she needed her beauty sleep before the wedding. Harrison kissed her forehead, wished her good night, and waited until he heard her breathing even out. Then he went to Chloe's room. The little girl was still awake, lying in bed with her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Harrison sat down beside her and took her hand. She did not pull away. She did not squeeze back, but she did not pull away. "Chloe," Harrison said softly, "I need you to listen to me. I know you're scared. I know you don't want to talk. That's okay. You don't have to talk. But I need you to know something. Mimi is coming back. I promise you, Mimi is coming home." Chloe's eyes flickered. For the first time in 2 days, something moved behind them. She did not speak, but her small fingers curled around Harrison's hand and held on tight. Harrison stayed with her until she fell asleep. Then he went to his office and reviewed the plan one more time. Every detail, every contingency, every possible way Vanessa could try to escape or lie or manipulate her way out of this. She would not escape. Harrison had made sure of that. Tomorrow, 200 guests would gather in a grand ballroom to watch Harrison Sterling get married. Tomorrow, Vanessa would walk down the aisle in a custom white gown, believing she had won. Tomorrow, the wedding of the year would become something else entirely. It would become an arrest. And Harrison Sterling, the billionaire who had been blind for so long, would finally open his eyes and show the world the truth. The day of the wedding arrived with clear skies and warm sunshine. It was as if the weather itself had been fooled by Vanessa's performance. The grand ballroom of the city's most exclusive country club glowed with crystal chandeliers and thousands of white roses. The string quartet played soft classical music. 200 guests, dressed in tuxedos and designer gowns, sipped champagne and waited for the ceremony to begin. Harrison stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. He looked every bit the billionaire groom. His smile was warm, his posture was relaxed. He greeted guests as they arrived, shook hands with old friends, accepted congratulations from business associates. No one suspected anything. No one looked at him and saw a man about to destroy his own wedding. Vanessa was in the bridal suite, surrounded by her bridesmaids. She was admiring herself in a full-length mirror. Her custom wedding gown was hand-beaded with thousands of tiny crystals. It had cost more than most people made in a year. Her hair was styled in an elaborate updo. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale. "Everything is perfect," Vanessa said to her reflection. She smiled. "Absolutely perfect." The ceremony was scheduled to begin at 4 p.m. At 3:45, the wedding planner knocked on the door of the bridal suite. 10 minutes, she said. "Everyone is in place." Vanessa took a deep breath. She adjusted her veil. She checked her reflection one more time. Then she turned to her bridesmaids and said, "Let's go get me a billionaire." The procession began. The string quartet shifted to the traditional wedding march. The guests stood and turned to watch the bride walk down the aisle. Vanessa emerged from the back of the ballroom, her arm linked with her father's. She walked slowly, gracefully, smiling at the guests on either side. Her eyes were fixed on Harrison at the altar. She was already imagining the rest of her life: the penthouse, the private jets, the unlimited credit cards, the status of being Mrs. Harrison Sterling. She reached the altar. Her father kissed her cheek and placed her hand in Harrison's. Vanessa looked up at him, her eyes shining with what looked like love. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," Harrison said. His voice was calm. His face was kind. He held her hands gently, the way a groom should.
The officiant, a white-haired man in formal robes, began to speak. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Harrison Sterling and Vanessa Blake in holy matrimony." Vanessa's smile widened. She was so close to everything she had ever wanted. "If anyone present knows of any reason why this couple should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace." The ballroom was silent. Vanessa held her breath for just a moment, waiting for the words to pass. Then the silence broke. Not with a voice, with a sound. The heavy oak doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. Every guest turned to look. Vanessa turned to look. Harrison did not. He kept his eyes fixed on her face, watching her expression change from joy to confusion to something else entirely. 3 uniformed police officers walked down the center aisle. Behind them was Detective Marcus Cole, the same detective who had arrested Rosa 3 nights ago. And behind him was Sandra Okonkwo, the district attorney, in a dark blue pantsuit and carrying a leather briefcase. The string quartet stopped playing. The guests began to murmur. Someone dropped a champagne glass, and it shattered on the marble floor. "Harrison?" Vanessa's voice was high and tight. "What is this? What's happening?" Harrison did not answer. He let go of her hands and took a step back. Detective Cole reached the altar and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Vanessa Blake," the detective said, his voice loud enough for the entire ballroom to hear, "you are under arrest for child endangerment, filing a false police report, and unlawful imprisonment of a minor." Vanessa's face went white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at Harrison, her eyes wide with panic. "Harrison, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them." The detective pulled out handcuffs. Vanessa stumbled backward. Her heel caught on the hem of her wedding dress, and she fell hard against the altar. Flowers toppled. The crystal vases shattered. Guests gasped and screamed. "This is insane!" Vanessa shrieked. Her voice was no longer sweet. It was raw and desperate and ugly. "I'm the victim! That maid kidnapped my stepdaughter. I called the police. I saved her." Harrison pulled his phone from his pocket. He tapped the screen, and the ballroom's sound system crackled to life. Every speaker in the room began to play the dash cam audio. Vanessa's voice filled the ballroom, vicious and venomous and completely unmistakable. "Shut up, you annoying little brat! You stay here until you learn how to be quiet!" The guests fell silent. Vanessa stopped struggling. She stood frozen at the altar, her white dress torn and dirty, her veil hanging crooked, her perfect updo coming loose. The audio continued to play. Everyone heard it. Every single guest heard Vanessa abandon a 6-year-old child in a freezing rainstorm. "You stay here until you learn how to be quiet. Do you understand me?" Vanessa looked at the guests. She looked at the police officers. She looked at the district attorney. And then she looked at Harrison. Her face twisted into something Harrison had never seen before. It was not fear. It was not shame. It was hatred. Pure, unfiltered hatred. "You set me up," she whispered. "I showed everyone who you really are," Harrison said quietly. "That's all." Detective Cole stepped forward and took Vanessa's arm. She tried to pull away, but the officer on her other side grabbed her other arm. The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. The sound echoed through the silent ballroom.
It was the exact same sound that had echoed through Harrison's penthouse 3 nights ago. Only this time, the right person was wearing them. Vanessa began to scream, not words, just sound, a high animal scream of pure rage. The officers had to drag her down the aisle. Her white gown trailed behind her, dragging through the broken glass and spilled champagne. Guests pressed back against their chairs, faces pale with shock. Some were crying, some were recording on their phones, some just stared, unable to look away. At the doors, Vanessa twisted around one last time. "You'll regret this, Harrison," she screamed. "I'll destroy you. I'll tell everyone what you did. I'll—" The doors closed behind her, her voice cut off mid-sentence. The ballroom was silent. Harrison stood alone at the altar. His tuxedo was still perfect. His face was still calm, but his hands were shaking. He had just destroyed his own wedding in front of 200 people. He had just sent the woman he loved to jail. And he had done it all without raising his voice, without losing his temper, without becoming the kind of person Vanessa was. The officiant cleared his throat. Should I say something?" Harrison shook his head. He walked down the aisle, past the stunned guests, past the shattered flowers, past the spilled champagne. He walked out of the ballroom and into the sunshine. He did not look back. There was somewhere else he needed to be. Someone else who needed him more than any wedding ever could. Harrison did not go home. He got into his SUV and drove straight to the county jail. The sun was setting by the time he arrived, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It felt like the first beautiful sunset he had seen in days, maybe the first one he had actually noticed. He walked through the metal detectors, past the front desk, down the long fluorescent hallways that smelled of bleach and despair. The district attorney had already filed the paperwork. The judge had already signed the order. Harrison carried the release documents in his hand, and he did not stop walking until he reached the holding cells. The officer at the desk checked his papers, nodded, and pressed a button. The heavy metal door slid open with a grinding sound. Harrison stepped inside. The cell was small and cold. Concrete walls, concrete floor, a thin mattress on a metal frame, and there, sitting on the edge of the bed with her hands folded in her lap, was Rosa. She looked up when the door opened. Her face was bruised with exhaustion. Dark circles ringed her eyes. Her uniform was gone, replaced by a plain gray jumpsuit. Her hair was tangled. Her hands were chapped and raw. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 3 days. But when she saw Harrison standing in the doorway, something shifted in her face. Not hope. She was too tired for hope. It was something softer, something like relief.
Harrison walked into the cell. He did not speak. He could not. His throat was too tight. He knelt down on the cold concrete floor in front of her, the same floor where she had been sitting for 3 days, and he took her hands in his. Rosa's hands were rough, calloused from years of scrubbing and cleaning and working, but they were warm, they were alive, and they were free. "It's over," Harrison said. His voice broke on the second word. "It's over, Rosa. You're free. You're going home." Rosa stared at him. Her lower lip trembled. A tear slid down her cheek, then another. She did not sob. She did not wail. She just sat there, crying silently, her hands gripping Harrison's like he was the only thing keeping her from floating away. "Chloe?" Rosa whispered. It was the first word she had spoken since the arrest. "She's waiting for you," Harrison said. "She hasn't spoken since that night. Not a word. But she said your name, Rosa. When they took you away, she said your name. She's been holding on for you." Rosa closed her eyes. More tears fell. She pressed her forehead against Harrison's hands and wept. Not for herself, for Chloe. for the little girl who had been abandoned and terrified and silent, for the child she had run through freezing rain to save. Harrison helped her stand. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. He led her out of the cell, down the hallway, past the desks and the metal detectors and the officers who watched them with curious eyes. He walked her to his SUV and opened the passenger door. She climbed in slowly, carefully, like someone who had forgotten what it felt like to sit in a real car. They drove home in silence. Harrison did not turn on the radio. He did not try to fill the quiet with words. He just drove, and Rosa watched the city pass by outside the window. Streetlights, trees, houses, people living their ordinary lives, unaware that a miracle was happening inside a black SUV on a Tuesday evening. When they reached the penthouse, Harrison parked in the underground garage. He led Rosa to the private elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. The elevator rose slowly. Neither of them spoke. The doors opened. The penthouse was quiet. The lights were dim. And there, sitting on the velvet sofa in her pink pajamas, wrapped in the same silver blanket from 3 nights ago, was Chloe. She was alone. Harrison had asked the nanny service to send someone, but Chloe had refused to leave the living room. She had sat in that exact spot for 3 days, waiting. No one knew what she was waiting for, but Harrison knew. He had always known. Rosa stepped out of the elevator. Her feet made a soft sound on the marble floor. Chloe looked up. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Chloe stared at Rosa like she was seeing a ghost.
Rosa stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, afraid to step forward, afraid to hope. Then Chloe's small face crumpled. Her lips parted, and she spoke. "Mimi." It was barely a whisper. It was the first word she had said in 3 days, and it was the only word that mattered. Chloe scrambled off the sofa. Her bare feet hit the marble floor, and she ran. She ran across the living room, her pink pajamas flapping, her blanket trailing behind her. She ran straight into Rosa's arms. Rosa dropped to her knees. She caught Chloe and pulled her close, so close, pressing the little girl's head against her chest, wrapping her arms around her like she would never let go. Chloe buried her face in Rosa's neck and started to cry. Real crying, loud, messy, healing crying. The kind of crying that comes after holding everything in for too long. "Shh, shh, shh," Rosa whispered. "I'm here, mi amor. I'm here. Mimi is here. I'm not going anywhere. Never again." Chloe's small hands gripped Rosa's jumpsuit. She was shaking. They were both shaking, but they were together. That was all that mattered. Harrison stood by the elevator, watching. He did not interrupt. He did not try to insert himself into the moment. This was not about him. This was about a woman who had loved his daughter like her own, and a little girl who had never stopped believing that love would find her again. Later that night, after Chloe had fallen asleep in Rosa's arms on the sofa, Harrison sat in his office and made a few calls. He transferred money into Rosa's bank account, enough to cover Mateo's medical care for the next 5 years, enough to bring Mateo to the United States so he could live with his mother, enough to ensure that Rosa never had to scrub another floor unless she wanted to. He also called his lawyer and asked her to draw up new legal documents. Rosa would not be a housekeeper anymore. She would be Chloe's legal guardian alongside Harrison. She would have a salary that matched his top executives. She would have a home in the penthouse for as long as she wanted it. She would have everything she had ever deserved and more. Rosa tried to refuse. When Harrison told her the next morning, she shook her head and said it was too much. She said she was just doing her job. She said she didn't need anything except to be with Chloe. Harrison looked at her. This woman who had run through freezing rain to save his daughter, This woman who had sat in a jail cell for 3 days, falsely accused, without once breaking. This woman who had more dignity in her smallest finger than Vanessa had in her entire body. "You saved my daughter's life," Harrison said. "There is no amount of money that can repay that, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying." Vanessa was sentenced 6 months later.
The judge gave her 5 years in federal prison for child endangerment and filing a false police report. Her family cut her off. Her friends disappeared. The media had a field day with the story of the bride who was arrested at her own wedding. She lost everything. Every single thing she had tried to gain through lies and manipulation. Rosa never worked as a maid again. She moved into the penthouse with Mateo, who arrived from Guatemala 3 weeks after her release. The little boy was frail and pale, but his eyes were bright and his smile was wide. He called Harrison Tio and followed Chloe around like a protective older brother. Chloe recovered slowly. There were bad days, nights when she woke up screaming, moments when she would cling to Rosa and refuse to let go. But there were also good days, days when she laughed, days when she played, days when she ran into Harrison's office and climbed into his lap and told him about her day in a rush of words that tumbled over each other. The wedding never happened. The ballroom was cleaned, the flowers were donated to a hospital, the dress was sold at auction, and the proceeds went to a charity that supported immigrant families separated by deportation. Harrison made sure of that. He did not date anyone for a long time after Vanessa. He focused on Chloe. He focused on Rosa and Mateo. He focused on becoming the kind of father his daughter deserved. And slowly, quietly, the penthouse became a home again. There is a lesson in this story. It is not a complicated lesson. It is not wrapped in poetry or hidden in metaphor. It is simple and plain and true. The people who love you are not always the people who share your blood. They are not always the people who wear expensive clothes or speak with polished words. Sometimes they are the people who show up when everything falls apart. Sometimes they are the people who run through freezing rain to find you. Sometimes they are the people who sit in a jail cell for 3 days, falsely accused, and never once regret the choice that put them there. Love is not a feeling. Love is a choice. And the people who choose you again and again, even when it costs them everything, those are the people worth keeping. If this story moved you, hit like and stay close. There are more stories like this one waiting for you. Thank you for watching until the very end. If this story reminded you that the truth always finds a way, drop a comment below and tell us about someone who showed up for you when you needed them most. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications because we have more stories of quiet courage and unexpected justice coming your way. If this story moved you, hit like and stay close. There are more stories like this one waiting for you.